Welcome back, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective, the podcast with subject matter experts in marketing. You know, we each have our go-to spots for learning more about digital marketing, and for me, one of those go-tos is today's guest and his website full of knowledge. On this episode, we'll speak with Ryan Deiss, the co-author of Digital Marketing for Dummies, the CEO and founder of Digital Marketer, and also the founder of 40 Other Companies. He's frequently recognized as one of the top digital marketing influencers on the planet, as well as a frequent keynote speaker. And on this episode, we'll discuss how to stand out amongst the clutter of digital advertising, disruptors, online reputation management, developing characters, and how brands can act smaller in order to compete today. So let's listen to a digitalmarketer.comer and a digital sharketer on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Ryan Deiss, thank you so much for joining us on A Shark's Perspective today. If you're a digital marketer and you need to be influenced by some of the top thought leadership in the space, if someone doesn't know who you are, at least in my opinion, they've been living under a rock. And I think it's a pretty good setup for an intro. Could you at least then, at a very high level, provide us a brief history of your story and career experience?
Yeah, well, so first of all, thank you. I can tell you that plenty of people have no clue who I am. I was actually coming down the elevator at one of our events last year, and Traffic Conversion Summit, which is our big annual event.
Right.
And here it is. I'm the opening keynote, and I'm coming down the elevator, and somebody asked me if I'm there for the event. So I can assure you that plenty of people have no idea who I am. I'm totally great with that. In fact, that's largely baked into much of our business model. We can maybe talk about that or not. But so I'm Ryan Deiss, co-founder and CEO of digitalmarketer.com. Made my first sale online in 1999. Own a number of businesses in a number of different markets, everything from kind of the DIY home improvement space to the makeup and beauty, to the outdoor and survival and preparedness, to brick and mortar, to software. Have a lot of fun experiences growing a lot of different types of businesses, and really get to take all the learnings from all of these different companies and highlight the best stuff over at Digital Marketer. So I think I probably have the best job in the world.
No kidding. So we've all got, our go-to sites for marketing information. And personally, one of my favorites is digitalmarketer.com. There's an amazing amount of content, great content. Talk, if you will, a little bit about the evolution of digital marketer in that business and the abundance of marketers that have joined for the enormous training. I mean, you can get soup to nuts everything you need in digital marketing training just out of that site.
Yeah, and that was our goal, right? To have it be that one-stop shop. It certainly isn't where it started. I started, I think, like a lot of people, just selling stuff one-off.
Right.
I would need to make some extra money, and so I would come up with a product. I'd get motivated, right? Nothing quite like needing to eat food or pay bills to get you motivated. But I'd create products starting again in my dorm room and back in 1999 and going all the way up through the 2000s. Just creating trainings and products one-off. It could be low-dollar trainings. It could be high-dollar trainings. Did my fair share of $2,000 product launches back in the day and things like that. But ultimately, what I realized is that where the market was headed, where business as a whole was headed, was to more of a membership and more of a subscription model. I saw Netflix making the pivot from selling DVDs one-off, over the mail, renting DVDs one-off, I should say, kind of like an online Blockbuster, video, into something where they said, look, pay us one flat rate, get access to everything. Saw the same thing with Spotify, and I thought, why not build the Netflix for marketers? And so I took all the products that we had at the time, and I stopped selling them one off. I pulled down the sales pages, I stuck them in one members area. I said, this is now called Digital Marketer Lab, and I charged one monthly rate to get access to everything. And initially it failed miserably, and then after a lot of trial and error, we eventually figured it out. And today, I believe it's the largest community of digital marketers. We've got well over 10,000 premium members, and pretty much anything you could want to know about marketing is somewhere in that site. Along with, and this is a biggie, a community of fellow marketers. So if you have a question and you ask it, even if it's 2:00 in the morning, you're going to get an answer. And it's that community that I think has made the biggest difference.
So how do you keep current at digital technology and trends? I mean, when you're the CEO and founder, and you're running a business, it's very easy to get locked into that business as opposed to keeping up with the tech per se. I mean, there's a lot of changes pretty frequently in the space that we're in.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's morphed.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when it was just me and the business was small, I had time to keep up with everything. Heck,
Right.
I had to keep up with everything. It was the only advantage that I had. Then over time, as we expanded the business and I shifted from doing the marketing to running the company, it got more and more difficult, and I really had to lean heavily on the team to do that. Now today, a digital marketer being 50 plus people, across all my different companies, there's a couple hundred different people. It really is the kind of thing where we have to lean pretty heavily on what we call our faculty. And
Sure.
so digital marketer today is at its heart a publishing company. If you're Random House, if you're Penguin, if you're HarperCollins, if you're one of the big publishing houses, you don't have to be an expert at everything. You just have to know who the best are.
Sure.
So a digital marketer, we know who the best marketers are in all the categories that really matter, and we have them bring their best to our community. And so that's the way that it works today is the same way that it's always worked. It's through people, and specifically working with the people who are in the trenches. And just at first that was me, and then it was my team, and now it's the digital marketer, faculty, people like Russ Henneberry, who I know you've interviewed, and Molly Pittman, people who used to even work on the digital marketer team and now are off on their own or with, working with other larger companies. That's where the information comes from. It's way too much for any one person to stay on top of. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, books then. You and that very smart gentleman, Russ Henneberry, your co-author, wrote a fantastic book that to me goes well beyond, the 101 version of digital marketing. I think a lot of people, when they think of For Dummies type books, thinks it's just a glossary. But, I thought you guys did a really good job of going deeper than that. And when you think of brand names at a national level, especially in books, and the For Dummies brand is obviously well at the top for grabbing eyeballs at the retail level. Talk a little bit, if you will, about the success you've seen because of digital marketing for dummies and where that's helped you open some doors as well.
Well, there's no substitute for being an author of a real book,
right?
In terms of people taking you seriously. I think it's largely unfortunate because it's so easy now to buy your way onto a bookshelf, right? It is something that can be bought, and the price has come down. So I don't think that's the case with all authors, and I'm not degrading the value of books. I mean, I'm staring right now at a bookshelf, full of, all of my best friends, right? I mean, books, they're my mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love books, and I was excited to be able to pursue that project. I was honored when Wiley reached out to us and said, we would like for you to write the digital marketing for dummies book, right? Our kind of definitive work on digital marketing. But one of the things I said to him, I said, that's fine. If we're going to do this, though, it's not going to be a basic book.
Right.
We can call it for dummies, but it's going to be the kind of book that I would want to, if I was teaching a master's level
100%,
course on digital marketing, that they could use. And they were great with that, which is good. And yeah, just like you said, I mean, there were stages that I couldn't get on, and then all of a sudden you got a book, and magically, oh, okay, you can go here. I think it's silly, right? It should be a meritocracy, right?
Yeah.
The world, it should just be about how much do you know and how good are you. But at the end of the day, there's too dang many people out there wanting the same thing. So people who are the gatekeepers, the ones who are making the choice, they have to put up filters. And in the workforce traditionally, I don't think this is the case as much anymore. Certainly isn't the case from here. That a filter was a degree. I think that's changing, but so in many cases, having that college degree, was a filter to getting a job. Doesn't mean you weren't smart. Doesn't mean you couldn't do it. It's just when they got a billion different applicants, hey, why don't we just who's got a degree?
Right.
I think in the business space, more times than not, the book is the degree. I think it's absolutely worth doing. But I don't think it should come before building a company. And if you're thinking I'm going to write a book and that's going to help me build a company, If a book is like alcohol,
Great
right?
point.
It's going to accelerate what you already are, it's not going to make something happen from scratch.
Sure.
So build a company. A book is another source of media.
Well, you've written other really good books. I'd like to discuss another one that I personally really enjoyed, that Invisible Selling Machine. So if you would talk briefly about, where that sort of stands today. You published it a couple of years ago, but talk briefly about how people should automate that part of their marketing and sales processes, with tools over your 5 phases of the journey. I mean, tech continues to change, but the fundamentals in that book are sound today with the strategies that businesses need to implement.
Yeah, and again, I went into writing that book. So I'll tell you the full backstory in the book, in just a second, because that I went into that with less noble intentions, let's just say. But I'll tell you that. But I felt like if I was going to write a book about marketing, I didn't want it to be outdated the moment it was printed.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure that the concepts were evergreen. And digital marketing, the tactics change, but the concepts don't. And also looked at the market. I was like, there's been a lot of books written about marketing, but nobody's really writing books about, automating marketing, about marketing automation, about email marketing in particular. How do we automate the sales process through email? It happened to be something that we were really, really good at, something I'd done a lot of work on. And somebody said, you should really write a book on this subject. And I remember thinking, why on earth would I write a book? That's the dumbest thing in the world. I can take the same content, I can package it up differently, I can sell it for a lot more, and it won't, be as much work. And they convinced me, just basically same with the conversation you had. No, when it's a book, it's different. It's treated differently, and it is. But at the end of the day, the main reason that I wrote that book, and that book is self-published. So unlike Wiley, unlike the For Dummies book, Wiley published that book. Mm-hmm. So if I want to buy that book from Wiley, they're nice. They'll give me a wholesale rate, and I can buy those books for $15, right? But I can't just go and sell it, for free to, on a free plus shipping kind of thing, or sell
Sure.
it for, $10, some below market deal to generate a lot of customers. I could do it if it was my own. So we wanted to do that book so that we had a self-published book so we could get a book out on the marketplace. But it was primarily, when I said less noble, it wasn't about like, oh, I'm writing this book and I have something to say and I just want the world to hear it. It's like, I knew that it was marketing, right? It was,
Sure.
It was an evil motive, but it was definitely, I wasn't writing my memoir to get it out there. I
Right.
needed a marketing piece that I could put out to the market, that people could see it and say, hey, maybe this Ryan Deiss guy, is somebody worth listening to. He has an interesting perspective.
So do you have any other books coming out anytime soon?
Yeah, actually, I've got a book talking to publishers right now, but I do think will kind of hopefully be that piece called The $1 Million Napkin. It's a book I've been working on for a while, and if you know anything about my story, I've told it a couple of times from stage, but it's not biographical. It's actually going to be written as a business fable. So it's not going to be telling my story, but it's going to be inspired a bit by my story. Just back in 2006, sitting in a bar in Dallas, Texas, at the Hilton Anatole, feeling sorry for myself because this business that I started was failing miserably. Trying to think, can I do this, or do I need to go back and do I need to go back and try again? Get a job and maybe live to fight another day. And I remember having a conversation with a friend. He said, if you can't write your business model on a napkin, it's probably too complicated. And that just popped into my head in that moment. And I looked up as I had this thought. There's a stack of cocktail napkins sitting there, so I grabbed a cocktail napkin, borrowed a pen from the bartender, sketched out kind of what should be a really simple business model, and went back the next day and began implementing that business model. And that was the year that my company, climbed out of the hole that I had dug for it. And it was the first year it generated $1 million in revenue. So that's why I call
Amazing.
it my $1 million napkin. It's framed, sitting in my office this day. I'm actually staring at it right now. And so that book kind of, it's going to really break down some of the things that I wrote on that napkin, and more than anything, encourage people to write their own.
Yeah, and of everything you ever write or do, that will be your most prized, authored novel, is that napkin.
Yep, that one stupid little napkin. It's
So,
probably the might be more money in any other book, that's for sure.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about tactics. And one of the biggest questions, I think, for any marketer today is standing out from in that ginormous space of ads. I mean, for example, where only 2% of digital ads convert. What advice do you give marketers and your clients as well on how their ads, their content, et cetera, can stand out from all of the clutter in marketing today?
Yeah, so I'll give you a tactical one, and then I'll give you one that's high level that people are going to like the answer as much, but it's really more accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So the first kind of tactical one is look at what everybody else is doing and do something the opposite.
Yes.
I see this flight to sameness in advertising more than just about anywhere else. And if you can just look different, that in and of itself is going to stand out, because everybody else they all do the same thing. And for the bulk of my career, early on, I benefited because I couldn't do what everybody else was doing. Early on, when I first got started in marketing, the big thing was flash banner ads. Right? You remember Flash?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't know how to do that. So my banner ads were these ugly, blinky, animated GIFs, and they crushed the Flash ones because everybody else was doing Flash. Now, I didn't have a brilliant epiphany about that. I just couldn't do it. I did the only thing I could do, and it happened to work. I just got lucky, right? So, but that's all I've ever done. What's everybody else doing? I'm going to do something that looks different, because at some point, really, it is about getting that initial glance. Right? If you can't get the glance, you're never going to get the stare. So that's the first thing that I would say that's a bit more, that is a bit more tactical. I see right now a lot of people doing video ads where it's a person on there like, hey, what's going on? Now when that was brand new, it was very, very effective. We're seeing it be less effective now. And we're seeing, for example, video ads on Facebook that are more text-based being more effective. So it's weird. It always changes, and you always have to be different, and that's kind of the fun yet simultaneously obnoxious thing about advertising. Now, here's what I'll tell you is the big secret to standing out in advertising that nobody wants to hear, especially if you have a direct response background like me, and that's brand. Have a better brand.
Yes.
A digital marketer, we can run kind of meh ads, but because people know our brand, they click on our ads. Mm-hmm. They look at our stuff. And the way that you build that is, one, you have to have a unique perspective. Like, you have to be saying something different that people will notice and care about and either agree or disagree with. Digital marketer, love it or hate it, has a perspective.
True.
It has a personality. A lot of people don't like us, but a lot of people do, and that's fine, right? And so when they see our ads, when they see me, and they see somebody else from the team, it's at least I know that person, right? Think about it when your phone rings, right, and you look down. If you recognize the number and it's someone that you like, you answer. If you don't, more times than not today, like, who answers the phone anymore when they don't recognize the number? That's crazy. You're like a masochist. You want to talk to a total stranger you don't know who's almost certainly trying to sell you something?
Sure.
Come on, right? If you don't recognize the number, you don't answer the phone. That's brand.
Right.
That's all branding is. I recognize it, and I genuinely like it. And so the way that you build a brand, and ultimately the way that you stand out, is you go back in time and you go first. Right? So if you say today, how do I stand out today? What I will say is, I have no idea. You probably can't today, but here's what you can do today. You can go first today. So today you can decide, instead of asking somebody for an order, instead of asking them for their email address, instead of asking them for money, you can go out and you can answer a burning question that they woke up with. They woke up this morning, they're walking around, they've got a question. You can answer that question in a video or in some other format in an ad. So in other words, you can spend money to answer a question and ask for nothing in return. And if you do that for 30 to 60 days, you will find that when you start advertising to that group, what do you know? All of a sudden, the same ads that didn't work in the past, now they work, right? If I call up my best friend in the world from a different number, he's not going to answer. If I text him and say, hey, by the way, I'm calling you from this number, make sure you answer, what do you know? Now he answers. What's changed? It's the same phone number. It's still me on the other end of the line. The only thing that's changed is awareness and brand. And so branding is not logo design and that kind of stuff. Branding is simply giving value in advance. Branding is making deposits of relational equity. There's very tactical ways to do that we can talk about, but that is the key to standing out.
Yeah, I love
that
phrase.
That is the key today. You have to be recognized. If they don't recognize you, you're not going to stand out. In anything you do, it might get a glance, but it won't get a stare.
Giving value in advance. I love that. So let's move in and talk a little bit about disruptors in marketing. And some have different impacts with how we talk to people versus how we sell. And I'll bring this up as an example. I don't want to go too far down the Amazon path specifically, but I feel like a lot of companies are still neither planning or acting upon Amazon enough even now. And all that time, Bezos is just counting his future trillions, while foolish investors aren't, considering that before investing. But seriously, though, in your opinion, what's the next disruptor in marketing? What should CMOs be either planning for or acting upon right now?
There's a lot. I mean, depending on what level we want to take it. You mentioned Amazon. I agree with that. If you're a retail company, if you're selling, if you have a retail store brand, so if you're selling a one-off product and you have products to sell, then you can likely sell through Amazon and be fine. If you are a retailer and Amazon is your competition, and you are not building community, right? If you're not building community around your brand, then you got to know it's just a matter of time before Amazon takes you out. And this is nothing new. Amazon is simply the Walmart of the internet, right? Walmart did this first. Walmart would come into a town, and all the little mom and pop shops would go out of business, except for the ones that delivered real live community and value. So except for the ones that when you walked into this particular hardware store, boy, they really knew their stuff. And they had, they may not have the best selection of the lowest prices, but, when you walked in there, they could tell you exactly the thing that you need, so you walk in there anyway. So I do think that Amazon is a giant disruptor, and the only preventative that retail brands have is to build community, right, is to build their own kind of verticalized Amazon Prime. I've got a buddy of mine who's in the golf space. His company was actually acquired by Golf Channel, by NBC Universal, because what he had built is he had built a community of golfers, and these people signed up for his community to get golf training, to get discounts on golf equipment, and they were buying a ton of golf equipment through his site instead of Amazon. Why? Because he was able to offer great deals, Amazon-like deals, because he was generating the bulk of his revenue as from membership fees, from subscription fees, and kind of like what Costco did. Right? Costco said, "Pay us $50 a year, and we're essentially going to make no margin on the products. All our revenue in the beginning is going to come from the membership fees." Then they went back and they were able to stretch their margins. But I think that's the solution for retailers. The other big thing, probably the single biggest thing that I see, the single biggest disruptor of all, though, is just noise.
Yeah.
Right? It's just noise. It's just the fact that there's so much stuff out there. There are so many options. I don't believe, I hear this all the time, and it irritates me every time. When people say that, people's attention spans, are just much shorter these days. That's not true. I just don't believe that. I haven't studied this. I'm not a psychologist. I haven't studied human behavior. I just don't believe it to be true. Because I know, and I know my friends, like, if there's a show they really like, they're going to binge watch it for an entire
Exactly.
right? So, so on one hand, there was like, people's attention spans are shorter. And on the other hand, binge watching on Netflix is at an all-time, high. So you just can't have both, right? You can't have both. What is the reality? The reality is there's more content than ever out there, and most of it sucks. So it's not that people's attention spans are shorter, it's that they have more options and the back button is closer. When we're consuming in a digital space, we can leave without being rude, and also when all you had was a couple of radio stations and in a city and only a couple of channels and one theater, the gatekeepers were phenomenal. They were massive. So if you were going to make it onto the radio, you're going to make it onto TV, or you're going to make it onto that stage, you are going to be amazing. And so people would sit and watch. Now there's no gatekeeper out there. All the world is a stage. And that's good, but what comes with it that's bad is if anybody can make content, anybody will, and most of them shouldn't. And yet, if you have good stuff, you have to compete. And so, with all that noise. And it's not that you won't be better than them, but they're going to be out there. So I think noise is the biggest thing in the world. How do you compete in the noise? It goes back to the brand thing that I talked about before.
Agreed.
It goes to starting small in a small room where you can get noticed and do expand from there. And it's just going to take either a little bit of patience or a whole lot of funding to make a big splash, which is very expensive.
Yeah, ask somebody about watching, not having time to look at an ad, and then Stranger Things comes out, and everybody binge watches for 10 straight hours.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly.
I'm going to kind of change gears then, and you talked a little bit about community. I think this kind of goes away that on your website, your personal website, there's a great interview you did, part of a great interview with Damon John, Mr. Shark Tank himself. And you made a great point that I would love for you to dive into a little bit deeper. And you said something to the effect of big brands needing to act smaller and how this is changing marketing. And I thought this was a brilliant point. And I've often thought the same, but couldn't articulate it the way you did. Elaborate, if you will, please, on that point and the guidance that you give to big brands today who need to act smaller and how they go about doing that.
Yeah, so, let's kind of go back and put some context on
Sure.
this. So it used to be that having the biggest brand was a dramatic advantage, right? Consumers, shopping was scary, and I don't know what if this doesn't work. You're old enough to remember this, but it used to be you'd go to the store and you'd buy something, and a lot of times it was broken.
Yeah.
Right. Especially if it came from Japan, or I remember back in the 80s, like getting toys and half the time something there's broken, right? It used to be that shopping was a little bit scary. You wanted to go in, you wanted to see it, you wanted to touch it because, oftentimes it didn't quite work how it should. Well, quality across the board has improved dramatically. Consumers' expectation of quality and their willingness to take that risk has disintegrated to, their willingness to take the risk, I should say, is amplified massively because the risk is so much smaller. The risk itself has almost entirely gone away. So the benefits that used to come with being a big trusted brand, now everybody starts off kind of generally trusting the process, and Amazon has taught us that. Mm-hmm. Amazon has taught us, you can go online, you can buy something that's going to show up, and it's going to be great. 99 times out of 100, and that one time it isn't, ship it back to us. We'll get you your money back before you can drop it in the mailbox, right? So Amazon has taught us that, and all other retailers have had to, bend to that. So that is the reality today. So the big trusted brand doesn't have the advantage, but what it does have is the disadvantage of having no soul, right? It's not fun to buy from them. It's not fun to buy from this, this institution, right? It's like doing business with the federal government compared to, doing business with your buddy on Main Street, right? We would all rather do that. We all want to do business with people we know and like. Historically, we had to do business with people we trusted because, it's scary. Now that it's not scary, I want to do business with people I know and like. And frankly, I don't know or like Lincoln.
Sure.
When it comes to the car brand, right? I don't necessarily know and like some of these really big, massive brands. And so it's created room for people who do the same thing, companies who do the same thing to pop up and say, hey, we sell the same thing that they do, but we're not boring and we have a personality. And we, think and value some of the same things that you do. So what it looks like for big companies to be small is to get clear on who they are and what they stand for. I think you see it done poorly a lot of times when brands will kind of jump onto political things. And it can be done well and it can be done poorly. I don't want to get into a political argument, but when it doesn't happen, when it happens in a way that that's not consistent or congruent with what the brand is, it falls flat, right? It's kind of like I mentioned Lincoln before, and they make great cars. I'm not knocking Lincoln as a company or their product, but they had these commercials with Matthew McConaughey. Do you remember these? Matthew McConaughey.
I remember Jim Carrey's spoof on SNL more.
Yeah, exactly. It was so ridiculous they spoofed it on Saturday Night Live. And the reason that nobody bought it, you got McConaughey, who's just Mr. Cool, Mr. Laid Back, Mr. Whatever. And the reason everybody thought it was ridiculous is because that's not the Lincoln brand.
Right.
Lincoln is a little bit up like Sweetie and uptight. We're this and that. Now, you could say we don't want to be that anymore. We want to be more McConaughey, but you can't flip that switch overnight. You have to decide as a company, be crystal clear on who are you? Who is your character, right? I believe that brands are fictional entities. Brands are fictional characters. And people talk about how marketers need to tell more stories. No, marketers need to get better at creating characters. And characters have depth, and they have feelings, and they have backstories, and they have hills that they're prepared to die on, and they have weaknesses and flaws. Right? They have all of these things attached to them. And if you look at a big brand like Apple, right? Apple is successful because Apple embodies the character of Steve Jobs.
So true.
Right? Steve Jobs became this mythical type figure, and Apple embodied those character traits such that it lived on in the brand even after Steve Jobs' death. You compare that to a company like Dell, the spirit of Michael Dell, its founder was never infused into the brand. It simply became a big company. So I think what a lot of these big brands need to do is they need to reclaim, what was that spirit of founding that we have, or what is it today? And they need to create their character. They need to start acting like it, talking like it. And then once it becomes clear that, that once they begin to clarify that message, then I believe the market will respond. But it's going to take a while.
Agreed.
A brand, an upstart brand, they can create it from scratch. There's no excess baggage. A legacy brand, it's hard, but it can be done.
Well, so playing in, kind of concert with acting smaller, is how digital marketing, a lot of social as well as part of this, converges with reputation management, both in tactics and best practices. And I know you've written some opinions on this. And if you're a brand that, especially a large brand, who suffers through some reputation issues, which basically means if you have a social presence anywhere, then there's likely, some legion of keyboard warriors and internet trolls out there looking for you, like it's the Hunger Games. But talk a little bit about the tactics that you recommend that can maybe counteract some of that nastiness and things that are best practices in social that you see brands exhibiting today.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things that they get talked about with regard to reputation management are fundamentally SEO,
yeah.
Right? It's search engine optimization applied. So I'm not going to get into the details of SEO. There's people much smarter than I am on that. I can tell you there's been plenty of negative stuff said about me and my companies. And, I believe that consumers today, they recognize that if there's nothing at all even remotely negative, then it's probably all fake. And the question is anybody saying anything nice about you?
Right.
So as a brand, as a company today, you can't flip out if somebody says something negative about you. It's going to happen. I do think that you need to respond. I think you need to respond respectfully. I think if you did genuinely mess something up, you need to apologize, right? You need to say, I am so sorry. And don't say I'm sorry you were offended. That's like,
yeah.
God dang. I mean, only dudes that are, unhappily married say stupid crap like
right.
that, right? I mean, if you I've figured out really quickly. No, I'm sorry. We messed up.
Yeah.
This is not like us. This is not us. And it sounds
being
like you
authentic.
just messed up, and as a result of that, you had a bad time. And I'm so sorry. And people get that. So I think that negative reviews and things like that are an opportunity for you to show some of that humanity that we talked about before. For you to act small. Come in as the founder.
Yeah.
I've done that. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It sounds like we really messed up. I'd love to have the opportunity to make it up to you. Here's my email address. And I'll post my personal email address in there for people to see. And some other people will see it and respond and email me. It's generally people saying, wow, I think it's really cool that you said that.
Mm-hmm.
But I want other people to say, yep, they mess up. They're human like me, but look, they apologize. That's a part of acting human. Then what you also want to do is you want to encourage the people who are happy to say nice things. So you got to get really, really clear at your company. What does it mean? What does it look like for someone to achieve some level of success with your product, with your service, right? So if you're a plumber, right, you show up and it's a clogged toilet, you get that unclogged. I would make a production about it. And not enough people do this. They don't graduate their customer. They don't say, look, it's done. Like, so if I'm a plumber and I unclog a toilet, I wouldn't just go and fix it. Kind of be like, okay, toilet's fixed. Here's your thing. Looks like it was this and that. Got that taken care of. I would go in and I'd say, here, I want to show you something. All right, go ahead. Press, go ahead and flush it. I'd be like, isn't that the most beautiful sound in the world? You have your toilet back, right? Like, I would make a whole production out of it to mark the occasion, right? Mark the moment. This is how we as human beings celebrate things, right? Graduations, weddings, even funerals, right? It's how we celebrate people's lives. So in your business, figure out what does success look like, then mark the moment. At Digital Marketer, for us, success looks like a new lab member asking a question and getting an answer.
Yeah.
So when that happens and they use this hashtag I'm new here, we follow up with them. We're like, hey, thanks so much. Isn't that great? Right? We would love for you to, say something nice about your experience, and we'd love to send you a sticker. Right? Where should we send it? We don't tell them we'll send the sticker if they say something nice. We ask them to say something nice, tell them to send it. But if you ask people for reviews just randomly, you're not going to get them. If you ask them for a review before you've delivered any value, they're going to laugh behind your back.
So true.
They should.
Yeah, absolutely.
So deliver the value, mark the moment, then say, we would love when their endorphin levels are as high as can be. We'd love if you could say something nice about us on Yelp or one of the other services that we'd really so much appreciate it. And you'll find you get lots of them. And while people say a few negative things, a lot more people say nice things.
So let's turn then to lead gen. One of my favorite topics is performance marketing. What do you see as a lot of your best practices that you're professing out to your lead gen and to clients as well, as far as best practices in attracting and engaging and in converting? Is it more of a mix? Is it omni-channel? Is it first party, retargeting, email? What kind of things are really getting you excited from a lead gen performance standpoint for your clients?
So lead gen is going to always fall in two categories, right? The offer that you're making and the media that you're promoting it in.
Sure.
So I'm excited about all media because all media works.
Yep.
The thing that really moves the needle, though, is what is the offer, right? What is the lead magnet? What's the thing that you are offering in exchange for the opt-in? And the biggie there is we just found specificity trumps all. People want to come up with these big, these big ideas, these dramatic white papers, and all this stuff. And in my experience, people download those and never consume them. They download them because they almost feel like they should. It's like if you're a lawyer, you have a law library. You don't really use it; you just feel like you should. So, but if you have something that's ultra specific, then we'll find that people will opt in to get that. They'll actually consume it, and if you deliver value there, you'll find that they enjoy hearing from you again and again and again. So I wouldn't focus so much on the media. All media works, but I do think that you need to be ultra specific. And I will tell you, retargeting is the greatest gift that marketers have ever been given. I mean, the ability to follow up with people
Agreed.
where we don't have their email address. The ability to offer somebody some content. So I talked about before, like go first, right? Produce a piece of content that answers somebody's big question. Then it's appropriate for those people who clicked on that to follow up with some relevant gated content that really takes that to the next level, right? So if you're in marketing and the question you answered was related to Facebook advertising, right? Then having a lead magnet that is Facebook ad, examples or swipe files, something like that, which is one that we have that converts really well. That's very appropriate. It's going to be so much better received because it's topical and it's coming from a source, you, who's already delivered value once before. So thinking about your lead generation, not as a moment, but as a series, as a campaign, making sure that it's playing out sequentially across different media and channels, all that matters. Making sure that if they go to YouTube and they see a retargeting video on YouTube, that it's going to remind them of an ad that they saw on Facebook. That may then remind them of an ad they saw on Google. We need to approach this like the way that big brands approach campaigns, right? It does make a lot of sense. They don't just say, we're going to do a radio spot.
Exactly.
TV and radio and billboards, and they're all going to be a campaign. So if you want to have a solid lead gen effort, then still approach it with that kind of omni-channel idea.
So Ryan, you're one of the top marketing influencers in the world, but who else also inspires you and influences you? If you're You mentioned earlier that you were talking about your library you're sitting in front of. I'm as well a voracious reader. If you were not going to speak at a conference, but you wanted to learn, then whose kind of content do you want to hear today?
Yeah, I mean, one of my, and first of all, it's like asking me which of my children is my favorite. It's so hard. So I'm going to give you one, not because there is only one, but if I were to name two, I'd have to name 200. And I will say, at Digital Marketer, we published a blog post called 101 Books Every Marketer Should Read.
Right.
And that's my 101 best, marketing friends and mentors. But there was one that I was going to point people towards that's maybe lesser known. His name's Roy Williams, and his book is The Wizard of Ads. And Roy is a radio ad man. He actually is one of my mentors. He lives out in Austin, Texas. His book was a New York Times bestseller back in, I think, late 90s, maybe early 2000s. Again, The Wizard of Ads. And it's a book that a lot of people have forgotten about, but it's one of the best dang marketing books ever written. And I love the perspective of a radio ad man, because I believe that radio is far more similar to social advertising, for example, than just about any other forms. Certainly more than long form. And I know for me, like I cut my teeth learning about like long form, direct response from people like, Eugene Schwartz and David Ogilvy, right? And that's amazing stuff. Like, they're great. But if you think about the way that we consume radio, right? We're consuming radio as we're driving down the road, we're distracted, we're listening to something else, and then an ad will catch our ear, right? Now think about the way that you might consume a Facebook ad, right? You're just scrolling through your feed, kind of like you're driving down the road, and then here this ad catches your eye instead of catching your ear. If you can learn to write great radio spots, 30, 60-second spots, then you can learn to produce really phenomenal social ads that cut through. And I just think that book, Wizard of Ads, is more appropriate today than it was even when it was written.
Yeah, that's great. So, and with radio comes podcasts, not with as many advertisements, but one of the things that drew me back recently to Digital Marketer was a content piece on the top 25 marketing podcasts, and I had sent you a note on LinkedIn letting you know that there was one in particular podcast that was missing. And Ryan, for all that is good in this world, will you please take another look at that list on your next ranking and consider a shark's perspective? Because I'm not at 101 books, but I'm trying to get to 101 podcasts.
One of the best moves that I ever made was separating myself from the content team.
Yes.
To avoid any conflicts of interest. But I will put in a good word for you. I promise.
I appreciate it.
I think it would deserve and merit a place on the list. Absolutely.
Well, I know that you've spoken at like 1,000 conferences and been CEO and founder at over 40 companies, and I would say that this particular podcast interview is probably going to be the one that puts you over the top. Checks off that on your bucket list. So, Ryan, I always feel like telling people just to turn to their Google machines to find you, considering how well your name is optimized. And I'm sure all the future Ryan Deisses in the world are irritated they can't get that website URL.
Yeah, there's a realtor in Peoria, Illinois, who probably hates me a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah, you're taking all of his leads. But where's the best place for people to find out more and follow you?
Yeah, the best place is absolutely digitalmarketer.com. I mean, that's where I will write occasionally to Medium, but digitalmarketer.com is still that's my day job, right? That's where I spend the bulk of my time. When the new book comes out, I promise we'll be announcing it there. But digitalmarketer.com, there's the Digital Marketer podcast as well, and the Perpetual Traffic podcast. So if you like podcasts, and I would imagine you do if you're listening to this one, then those would be a great stop.
Absolutely.
And whether you like reading or listening, check us out at digitalmarketer.com.
Well, I'm a big fan. Thank you, Ryan, again for speaking with us on A Shark's Perspective. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So there was my conversation with Ryan Deiss, the co-author of Digital Marketing for Dummies, the CEO and founder of Digital Marketer, the founder of 40 other companies, a frequent keynote speaker, and frequently recognized as one of the top digital marketing influencers on the planet. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from our conversation with him. First, there's an amazing amount of clutter and distraction and noise out there, so you want your ads to stand out. If you want your ads to stand out, then look at what everyone else is doing and do the opposite. If you can just look differently, then that will help you stand out. If you can't get the glance, then you're never going to get the stare. It should always change. It always has to be different. If you truly want to stand out, then have a better brand. That's the real way. You have to, 1, have a unique perspective, and 2, you have to stand out early. Branding is simply getting value in advance and making deposits of relational equity. You have to be recognized. Second, whenever you think of disruptors in the retail space, then one company obviously stands out. Amazon is a giant disruptor, and the only preventative that retail brands have is to build community and their own verticalized Amazon Prime, if you will. His view of the single biggest disruptor, though, is noise. There's more content than ever out there, and most of it sucks. You've got to stand out with better ads and better content, and you have to compete with all that noise. Third, big brands need to act smaller. It used to be that having the biggest brand was a dramatic advantage for the 800-pound gorilla, but it also puts a big target on you. The big brand doesn't have the trusted advantage of having a soul, and it's created room for smaller brands, especially startups, to be able to do the same thing. Tell the story of the soul of your brand. Brands are fictional characters. Decide who your character is. Make the characters relatable in some way other than just being the biggest. Big brands should get back to their souls. Got a question? Please feel free to find me on LinkedIn or send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this show regarding another one of the many components that makes up marketing today. So stand out today from the noise and be a better digital marketer. And join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.